So welcome to this talk on how do you know what you know. Very nice to see so many familiar faces after so long. I think it must be something like 15 years, but delighted to see everybody. Now, today what we have met here to talk about is an important concept for us to understand. All of us know so many things, right? We are not ignorant people. We know so many things. And we live our life based on those things that we know. It behoves us well to re-examine whatever we think we know. It is a big question of life. How do you know what you claim to know? How did you know this thing? Now you may say, why bother with this? Let's learn something new. Why are we examining what we know? We know that. The frightening thing about life is that my life is the way it is because of the way I'm thinking. And as long as that thinking stays the same, I could change anything. And my life will continue to be the same. You may have noticed that you have gone through spiritual lectures, you may have gone through courses of self-development, you could have read self-help books. Things don't really change that much. Really what happens is that we think we have become so good and this world is so bad and I do all these nice things and people are treating me so badly. That's what we come up with. We don't seem to get it that we have to re-examine what I am thinking. You heard the story of Achilles, right? Yeah, you all heard it. Heard it? Yes. The goddess Thetis dipped her son Achilles into the river Styx in the hope of giving him immortality, but she had to hold him by the heel. So the heel stayed mortal. The rest of him was immortal, but he died because of that heel. Similarly, within all of us, there is a lot of knowledge, but there's also something which is a wrong way of thinking which we have. And as long as we have that wrong way of thinking, it is like our Achilles heel. It is the glass ceiling over which we will not be able to climb, no matter what we do. So it's very important for us to figure out what is that thing. That's the one job that's tough. You may even enjoy this lecture, but this lecture will be of no use to you unless we are able to identify what that one thing is. It keeps us from our productivity, it keeps us from our happiness, it keeps us from having good relationships, it keeps us from having good health. It's stopping me from everything, but I refuse to identify it. It's like a invisible rain that is on us. Don't you think, I think all human beings, all of us have this feeling that I could have done better. Would you agree that most of us have this feeling, okay, I've done a lot, but I could have done better. So if I could have done better, then why have I not? What's stopping me? That is what we have to identify. What is that thing? So that's how this book actually starts. So will you read page 9? If you all have the book, please also read with it. Page 9, page 7, which is starting from the first para of the book.
Life's design. Why is our life the way it is? Why is it not better, or worse, or different? The simple answer is thoughts. Life is the way it is because of the way we think. When we think differently, we perceive things differently. We behave differently. Rich people are rich because they think in that manner. Engineers are engineers because they think in that manner. So too with artists. Sad people are sad because they think that way. And happy people think in happy ways.
Second paragraph.
There is an entire body of knowledge in our heads. We refer to it for interpretation, for decisions, for judgments, at work, in interpersonal relations, in food, in entertainment, in every bit of life. It is our friend, philosopher, and guide, and often the lawyer, judge, and executioner as well. This bundle of thoughts is the driver of every aspect of our lives. What our life was, is, or will be, all based on this little bundle. That internal pattern is the cause of all things, good and bad.
That internal bundle that we do not look at. We will do Diwali cleaning. We will clean our houses. We will clean our cupboards. Are we cleaning our heads ever in a lifetime? So we have all these cobwebs in there. It's like we have this beautiful mansion. It has many wonderful things, but it also has a lot of junk. Who's removing the junk? We want to get more furniture into the house, but who's cleaned the house? So it's critical that we do spring cleaning of our beliefs as much as we do them for our houses. Diwali should be a time not for cards, but for reviewing. Do I really have the right thoughts in my head? So what are these wrong thoughts we have in our head? They're not wrong, they're merely unexamined. The great Socrates said, the unexamined life is not worth living. The unexamined thought is not worth having. Unexamined thoughts are of two types. One is what in Vedanta we call Hiranyagarbha. Hiranyagarbha means the golden womb. It is referring to the sum total of all the influences on us. We are getting in thoughts from everywhere, right? We were born in a particular household, in a particular country, at a particular time, and all this influences us. Everybody, every one of us is a product of our times. Like a simple thing is, you all have come dressed in a particular way today. And according to you, this is an appropriate form of dress for this occasion. Think of this very same place 100 years ago. Had you come dressed like this, they would have mocked you. They said, what have you worn? Completely different clothes. Think 100 years hence. If you come dressed like this, in that environment, we don't know what that environment will be. What will they be wearing? Will they be wearing also? We don't know. So, in that environment, what will these clothes be? So, how did I come to think that this particular outfit was acceptable? It is a product of my times. I am a product of my times. How much my thinking has been is just because I happen to be born in a particular place, at a particular time, in a particular area. All these influences put together is known as the Hiranyagarbha, the whole influence, how we are being influenced. How the newspapers are influencing us, how our times are influencing us. What according to us is right and wrong, it's all a matter. See, you can easily establish that. Suppose I tell you something like, here, I'm giving you the belief of a person. You tell me where is this person, okay? This person believes that Zeus is the greatest god. Where is he from? Where is he from? Zeus is the greatest god. The Greeks believe in Christ now. No. Zeus is the great. Greek is right, but today's Greek, does he believe this thing? We are talking about what happened?
Hellenic civilization.
Yes, we are talking about ancient Greece. Today's no Greek person believes that Zeus is the greatest god. They believe in Christ now. So if you even know just one belief of a person, you can place him in his time, in his thing. A man believes that he is the lord and master of his family, and he's the protector, and he's the karta dharta. Okay? A person believes that a man is this. Where is he from? Okay, never mind, let it go. So, you see, you hear the belief and you know so much about that person. We are all a product of our times. Here's a person who believes Ram is great. Here's a person who believes Rahim is great. I mean, they're all products of their own times, of their own backgrounds. This is one type. There's another type of unexamined belief we have. And that unexamined belief has not come to us from any external source. It has come to us from our own minds. Some people say, I don't do what other people do. I do my own thing. That doesn't mean it's an examined belief. It could be merely impulsive. Just impulsive. I feel like doing it, and I did it. And this has so much power on us that we can wreck our lives doing whatever we feel like doing. For this, I don't need to give you examples. You read the papers in the morning, you will find all these wonderful people who had these wonderful notions and started doing them. In Mumbai, we have a great example of that. I don't know how familiar you are in Delhi about it, but at one time, at least in Mumbai, she was all over the papers. Her name is Indrayani. Are you all aware of Indrayani? She is not doing what everybody else is doing. She is doing her own thing. Well, now look where that gets us. So it is not about whether these unexamined thoughts have come to us from outside or whether they are a product of our own mind, our own desires, our own hopes, our own moods. Now you may think, okay, I don't know, this is ancient Vedanta, who knows whether this is right or wrong. We're just going to read to you a recent study that was done. If you're not shocked by this, I don't know what you'll be shocked by. Okay. Israeli judges. This is page 24. Sorry. Are you all feeling hot or is it me? Cold? Huh?
Moods. Our current mood further influences the way we think. Nature and mood are akin to climate and weather. One is long-term and permanent, and the other is current and temporary. Like nature, moods too affect our actions and decision. A study of parole judges in Israel showed that the single factor that most influenced whether a prisoner would get parole or not is the last snack break. The judge's snack break. Immediately after the judge's snack break, parole was granted 65% of the time, and the figure came down to 0.
Have you heard the story so far? Can you read just the example again? Yeah.
So we're talking about the judge's snack break. And they found out that after the judge's snack break, parole was granted 65% of the time. And the figure came down to 0 just before the next break. After the break, it rose again to 65%, according to a publication of the Royal Statistical Society published in May 2014.
Crazy, right? You got the story? I mean, you're all, there was parole, judges, Israel. I'm not making this up. This is a real study that was done. The judges are giving parole to the prisoners, and 65% are getting the parole after a snack break. The judge's snack break, not the prisoners. They happen to have their snack, and you know how we all feel after a nice good chai nasta thoda ho gaya. So we feel like really good. And grant parole. And then when you're hungry, you say no to everything. I hope you understand what to do next time you want to ask your husband for a diamond necklace. Just a full belly makes the world look different. Shocking. So there are two influences in the two types of unexamined thoughts. One is what has come to us from the environment, like the traditions, like the times, like the places, and one which is coming from within. We in India give so much importance to tradition. We say something is traditional, and that sort of closes the issue. I mean, we are going to take it because it's traditional. There's a small story from psychology which Dr. Dakshina will read for you. Yes, page, yes. 20. Page 20.
A man recently married was surprised to find his new bride cutting and disposing of an edible portion of the meat. She would trim it and then cook it. When he inquired why she did so, she replied that it tasted better that way. Since they were newly married, he did not argue. On one occasion, he happened to watch his mother-in-law cook. She too cut and disposed of a perfectly edible portion of the meat. She too explained that the meat tasted better this way. One day, he visited his mother-in-law's mother. Chatting with Granny in the kitchen while she cooked, he was taken aback to see that she too trimmed the meat. This was getting quite mysterious. It piqued his curiosity. With feigned nonchalance, he asked her why she trimmed the meat and threw it away a perfectly edible portion. She laughed and replied, "Oh dear, my pan is too small. The full piece of meat does not fit, so I trim a little." So the small pan had started the tradition of the meat tasting better if trimmed.
That's our traditions. Unexamined, totally unexamined. What to this whole country is like hardcore Punjabi food. Like, what is that one dish which, I mean, if you say it, it's Punjabi, it's North Indian. What is that dish? Well, you will have it for breakfast, you have it for lunch, you'll have it for dinner, you will have it anytime you're hungry, you will have a aloo paratha. This is hardcore North Indian. You get the best. Go to Khao Gali, it's famous for this. This is hardcore Punjabi tradition, isn't it? No, it isn't. That's what we think it is. Potatoes were brought to India by the Portuguese. There is nothing Indian in an aloo paratha, and yet we are absolutely convinced chilies, which we eat so much of, is not Indian. But it's our tradition. It's crazy what all we put under the name of tradition. And now that we give it this name of tradition, it's obviously acceptable. We need to examine our beliefs. We need to find out whether any of this that we claim, and we so deeply believe, it's not just a claim. I mean, you would argue that, at one of these talks, we read out this portion about these Israeli judges. One elderly lady, she refused to believe it. I said, please go and do the Google. She said, no, judges don't behave like that. Oh, is that so? This is not something I'm making up. This is recorded and published in peer-reviewed journals. This is not my made-up story. It is so difficult for us to take it in. So we have two types of unexamined thoughts. Remember what they were? Good. You all are still listening, no? Two types of unexamined beliefs. What comes from within us, what comes from outside of us. The Hiranyagarbha, the total influence, and the Manas, our own mind. Now the question, so why are we examining thoughts? Very good. Only Mr. and Mrs. Naranga listening. What's happening to everybody else?
No, they are responding, we are not.
Okay. But you're listening. Okay. So, why should we examine? Because my life is the consequence of my thoughts. If I were to leave Delhi and go and stay in another place, I would have changed the entire setup of my life, but not the experience of my life. If I would be grumbling about something here, I'll go there and grumble about things there. My experience is based on how I look at things. That doesn't mean the world is not what it is. It just means it's my interpretation of those things. So if I want to change the quality of my life, if I want to change the experience of my life, I have to examine my thoughts. I think so far everybody agrees. Everybody agrees? I think this is sort of, you already know this. So you're probably asking, okay, to ab kuch naya batao. So naya is this. How do we examine our thoughts? To do this, we turn to Indian epistemology. Indian epistemology is the science, is the understanding of how we learn, of how we think, of why we know what we know. How did you get to know whatever you know? So there are 4 pramanas. There are 4 ways of learning something. The first way of learning something, to know about something, is called pratyaksha. Pratyaksha means sense perception. Sense perception is the first, most primary, the most basic way we learn. Children would stay dumb if they didn't have sense perception. You would not know anything. If you switch off your 5 senses, you would not know anything. You would be in deep sleep. So that's the first and most primary way we learn things. You can't do without it. The problem arises because it's so strong, the influence of whatever you have seen or heard. But everything that we have seen or heard isn't necessarily correct. If you look up at the night sky, you will see all these beautiful stars over there. Isn't it? You've all seen? At night you look up. I mean, in the cities you don't see so many, but if you go outside, it's a fantastic panorama of stars over there. So beautiful. And if I ask you, are you seeing the stars? What will you say? Yes, I am seeing the stars. Are the stars there? Yes, the stars are there. Basic physics, basic astrophysics tells us that the light from the nearest star, our nearest star is Proxima Centauri. So the light from the nearest star to us takes approximately 4 years. So when you look at Proxima Centauri, you are seeing what it was 4 years ago. The other stars are billions of light years away. That means you're seeing how they were a billion years ago. And today, what is this condition? We don't know. For all we know, they may not be there. They may have burnt out by now. And yet, we will look at it and swear that it is there. Who will change our mind about it? Because I am seeing it. How can you tell me it's not there? Suppose I ask you, how do you know you are at this lecture today? What is the answer? Come on, you know that much. How do you know you're at this lecture? Huh? How do you know? Then they know. How do you know? How do you know you're here? You can hear it, you can see it. Suppose I tell you it's not there, will you believe me? How can you? You will say, अरे क्या बात कर रही हो? मैं तो देख रहा हूँ, मैं सुन रहा हूँ. Of course it's there. That's how strong the senses are on us. anything that I've seen or heard or felt or touched or smelled, I'm convinced about it. Does anybody in this room believe that the sun goes round the earth? Please, does anybody believe this? No, right? We are all certain that the sun is stationary and the earth moves. We all know this, and we've known this as humanity for a few centuries, right? Till today we say sunrise, sunset. That's how strong the evidence of the senses feels to us. Even though we know it, don't believe it. We continue to think this thought. So, the first pramana is pratyaksha, sense perception. You know things because you take it in through your senses. That's the first one. Now, to know whether we've taken it correctly or false, we need to assess it. Now, how to assess it, I'm not going to go right now because the book is there for you to go through, but there is a way of knowing whether what we are perceiving through our senses, is that right or wrong? Page 37.
Observation is an art used in a variety of ways. Doctors use it for diagnoses, mothers to know their children, detectives to solve cases, businessmen to negotiate deals. Astute observation is the beginning point of knowledge. Many inventions and discoveries took place because of it. Georges de Mestral discovered Velcro on a hunting trip by observing the cockleburs attached to the trousers of his dog's fur. Their strong hoop and loop design led him on to patenting Velcro. By observing flies on a petri dish with livers, but not on any of the other organs, Claude Bernard discovered the glycogenogenic function of the liver. Obviously, there was sugar in those livers. His other great discovery was the role of the pancreas in the process of digestion. This too was by a chance observation. Some rabbits were passing clear and not the cloudy urine of herbivores, and Bernard surmised they had not been fed. They were subsisting on their own tissues. A later autopsy on those rabbits showed the role of the pancreas in the process of digestion. By just learning to see things properly, so much flows into our cognition.
Very important pratyaksha pramana. But
Deceptive.
maybe deceptive. So therefore, you need to assess whether or not it was right. Imagine all these discoveries, how have they taken place? Because somebody noticed. Imagine this, a scientist just enters a laboratory and so many of his, the organs are lying there, but the flies are only on the liver. Now when we see this, we'll say, kitna ganda sab rakha hai, nikalo isko. He didn't say that. He said if the flies are only there, there must be sugar there. And humanity learned a big lesson, right? So observation and doing it properly is of great benefit, but it cannot be done blindly. That's the point. It's not that we are saying don't do it, but it cannot be done blindly. Even if our observation is correct, we tend to infer something from it. It is the second pramana. Wait, I must show you one more. Do we have that slide or not?
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
Varun, can you show us the slide?
Okay, never mind. It's all right. You can see it in the book.
Hello.
It's okay, don't worry. Yeah. No, I'll continue. Okay, so let's assume this is the. You'll see it in the book. There are 2 lines. I won't tell you because if I tell you, I'll wreck it for you. So you read it in the book. Okay, so from our perception, we come to the second one, which is inference. You may have heard it correctly, seen it correctly, but you're jumping maybe to a conclusion based on that. Someone tells us that you're a very silly person. Okay, I heard correctly that you said I'm a very silly person. Now, what is going on in my head? What is the conclusion I have? I could have a host of conclusions. I could think, he's calling me silly because I'm poor and he's rich. He's calling me silly because I'm dark and dark people are always looked down on. Or I'm of a lower caste, therefore he's calling me silly. Right? So you have so many possible interpretations of a single event. Another interpretation can be, but he's calling me silly, he's just a rude person. Nothing to do with me, isn't it? Who goes around calling people silly? So you can have a host of interpretations based on what's going on here. So to get your anumana is the second way of knowing things, getting your inferences right. Page 41.
Many things which are cognized erroneously.
Oops, that's... Okay, I think I'll jump it. Page 49. Sorry, my fault.
That was to go with the slide. From observations, people arrive at judgments. These judgments may or may not be accurate. Matthew Arnold gives us an excellent example of this in his famous poem, Sohrab and Rustum. The great warrior, Rustum, longed for a son, but his wife, fearing for her son's life, sent Rustum a message that a girl was born. Disgusted, Rustum never returned home thereafter. The young son, Sohrab, grew up and, like his father, became a great warrior. He was motivated by only the one desire to find his heroic father. One day, in single combat, the two came face to face, but Rustum has come there on the condition of anonymity. Sohrab, seeing the age and bearing of his opponent, asks anxiously about Rustum. He pleads with Rustum to tell him if he knows his father. His father hears this and fears for his anonymity. Why is this young man so insistent? He may want to rob me of my reputation. And this unwitting and innocent conclusion leads him to drive his spear through his only son. And then it is too late to repent. There is only time to mourn.
You know the story, right? Sohrab and Rustam. He's asking him, please tell me about Rustam. Please tell me. His father is listening to this. He's hearing it correctly. But what is his conclusion? All sorts of conclusions he has come. And the end result is he kills his own son. Bad inferences can really mess our lives. How many divorces must have taken place based on this? How many murders may have taken place based on this? What are we inferring from what we're hearing? What are we doing? Haven't you felt that I'm talking and this person is simply not getting what I'm saying? Maybe other people are thinking that about us. We're not getting what they're saying. So bad influences can be the bane of our existence. So we have pratyaksha, we have anumana. Then the third way of knowing something is upama. Upama means comparison. Most of the scriptures use upama to explain things. A comparison. The Ramayana, the Mahabharata are used to explain some ideas to us. Take the story of the hare and the tortoise. When Aesop writes the story about the hare and the tortoise, he wants us to get from it that the slow and the steady win the race, right? We will get into an argument on, do hare and tortoise really have an argument? Did they ever have a race? Some rational people will say, no, they cannot have an argument. They cannot have a race like that. Some traditional people will say, of course. Wise people have told us that. Wise people cannot be faking us. Therefore, they had a race. There was a time in Satyuga where the hare and the tortoise used to chat and have a race. This is the madness going on today. When the scriptures tell us these beautiful stories, give us these beautiful sort of examples, right? We have Ganesha, the elephant-headed god. Now, are we going to start getting into a discussion of, is it possible for a human being to have an elephant head? It's not possible. No plastic surgery is going to be able to do that because the nerve endings will not match. The lung power of a human being cannot keep an elephant head alive. But that's not the point of it. The point of it is a wise person has a big head. That's what they're trying to say. An enlightened person has a huge head. So how will you show it iconographically? How will you show it in the drawing? How can you show it to people who don't want to learn it through an intellectual process? You tell a story. And these stories are so beautiful. But are we understanding the right thing from it? Are we getting the right message from it? We have to examine. And the fourth way of knowing something is agami pramana, which is authorities. We cannot question authority for the simple reason is that person has spent more years, more thought, more time with that subject. How could we possibly be able to assess whether he's telling us the right thing or not? So we just have to follow him. But we cannot assess what he's saying, but we can assess whether he is an authority in that or not. That much we can do. If we have decided he's an authority, then we shut our eyes and follow. But first, let's decide whether this is the right authority. For instance, suppose you take the hare and the tortoise story on agami pramana. Then you will have to say that the hare and the tortoise really had a race. But that's not the right pramana, right? Which is the right pramana? Which one? No, which is the right pramana? Which is the right? Comparison, right? You will have all forgotten me. You all think that you can come to a lecture and relax. You know, right, that doesn't happen. You're actually expected to listen, to follow the line of thought. You remember all this stuff, right? Haven't gone in 15 years. So, we have to know which pramana to use. We have to know the yardsticks of those pramanas. We have to figure out whether we got the right idea in the first place or not. Otherwise, we will all be killing each other for no rhyme or reason. Look, we're here for a short time. All of us, we're here for a short time. We're not going to be here very long. We'll be here maybe 100 years. Those who are very young may be 110. I mean, we're not going to be here that long. Isn't it our duty to be happy while we're here? And you can't be happy if the head is all messed up. It can't be done. So let's sort this thing out once and for all. Let's get our thoughts right. Some people argue with this and they say, no, what is all this thoughts you people keep talking about? It's not thoughts, it's your experiences that are forming you. Now what do I say about that? I can only quote Mark Twain. Mark Twain says, a cat who sits on a hot stove will never sit on a hot stove again. But then, she will never sit on a cold one either. That's how our experiences teach us. Then there's also another question about goodness and knowledge. Do you need to be good to know? Does virtue have any role to play in our knowledge? You can argue this one quite a bit. But haven't you noticed people sort of go dashing up the corporate ladder suddenly to fall from grace? Who was that poster boy of Indian corporate in the US? What was his name? That one. That's whatever, yeah. Insider trading was him, no? Can you imagine? Gone so high up. Then how can he lose it like that? Even if he intended to be criminal, surely he has the brains to keep himself safe when he's being criminal. Then why? Why? How is it that we seem to lose our knowledge at times? If people go for an interview, they can't answer a question which they could have answered otherwise. You give a talk in front of 200 people, you may not say what you know. Why? How is it that our knowledge disappears? I go to the negotiating table, I don't know what to say, but the moment I come out, I know exactly what to say. Haven't you experienced this? You go to a party, somebody says something to you, you don't know what to say, but you go home and then it's all very clear what you have to say. How is our virtue influencing our knowledge? How is it doing that? In India, there's a huge tradition that you have to be good. You know, there's a whole structure on this thing. They don't, in the Atma Bodha and the other texts, they start with all this. You should have Shat Shampati, you should have this, you should have this, then you open the book. Now, the question is, if I have all these qualities, now why will I open this book? But so much emphasis on goodness. Why? So, that chapter talks about what is the relationship between goodness and knowledge. And then comes another important question as to why do thinking people differ? Suppose we all learn to think properly. Will we all agree? Never, right? It doesn't ever happen. Scientists don't agree, philosophers don't agree. There's a saying that for every philosopher, there's an equal and opposite one. Anything anyone tells you, there is somebody to tell you just the opposite. How come all these thinkers, they're all great thinkers, and why don't they think alike? So chapter 8 of the book actually goes into that to figure out why don't we think alike, and the answer to that is, it is our nature. You can sometimes all your thinking is in alignment to a particular nature. You cannot through logic convince a pessimistic person to be optimistic, and you cannot through logic convince an optimistic person to become pessimistic. So we have gunas, we have this tamas, rajas, sattvanas, and that gives us a certain picture of this world. It doesn't mean we are being irrational, but it means through that lens, it will always appear like that. You can't do anything about it. And from that we move on to what then is knowledge. Lots of you have asked me in the past this question, how do you reflect? So you have already know that through reflection you gain knowledge. So the big question has always been how to reflect. I think there are 20 methods given over there. So now we can't do all of them, but there are ways of doing that. And then what is the final purpose of all this knowledge should take us? All this thinking, all this effort that we have put in takes us finally to thoughtlessness. And in thoughtlessness, the actual truth of life is established. Now you don't have to swallow this because I'm saying it, but this is the final conclusion of Vedanta. You can examine it in the book about how it finally truth is beyond thought. Because thought itself is a finite entity. How can a finite entity hold the infinite? It can't be done. So we bring all our thoughts to discipline, and from discipline we move it to thoughtlessness. We can't do thoughtlessness now because now it's all chaos. First we have to discipline it, then we can bring it to single-pointedness and thoughtlessness. So this whole structure of knowledge has to be well understood by us, right from the beginning, which is just irrational beliefs that are wrecking our life, to sorting out those irrational beliefs, to understanding the influence of things on those, and finally coming to what is that complete and whole and perfect pure knowledge. So this is basically what the book is about. I hope you will, I won't say read it, but think about it, because that is what is critical. It's very easy to take out some money and buy a book. That's easy. The tough part is, are we going to use this as a tool for getting our own internal structure sorted out? Because that's the real purpose, isn't it? Okay, so that's it for today. I must end with a quote from Einstein that says, "The major problems of our days cannot be sorted by the same kind of thinking that created them." Whatever problem we are stuck in is because we are thinking about it in that manner. So thank you. If you have any question, I can take it.